And we're back. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Got a few hours of sleep. Obviously, hard for me to sleep with everything going on. Please excuse the bags under my eyes, but I'm feeling good enough, and being able to report the situation on the ground and try to give a balanced analysis, a reconciliatory analysis is important. This is actually, I'm streaming this not only to YouTube, but also to TikTok for the first time. So those tuning in on TikTok, welcome. Really the goal of this channel has always been to reconcile between people in conflict. It's been to bring people together for conversations on topics that people generally don't come together for conversations on. Being Israeli, our primary focus has been Israel Palestine, but we do touch on other topics. We've had anti-Semites on the program. We've touched on other aspects of social justice. Obviously, now we're going to talk about Israel and Palestine because the situation there is dire. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to start with a little analysis, some personal updates, and then we're going to try to get updates on what's going on. There's really not too much new information since the last live stream 4 hours ago, but there's some. First, some updates. A lot of people have reached out to see how I'm doing. So first of all, thank you for the support. Some of those who have reached out have actually been Palestinian friends. So, at times where we seem farther away than ever before to achieving peace, it's important to remember that there are people on the other side that are still care for one another. And it does warm my heart that I've had Palestinian friends reach out for support. My family's okay. My friends, to the best of my knowledge, are okay. Not everyone I know, though, is okay. Two of my sister's friends, including their 3-year-old daughter, as well as their parents, have been kidnapped. As much as I want to remain optimistic, I don't think there's a high likelihood that they get out of this alive. The history of kidnappings is not positive, but yet I will remain hopeful. As far as I know, that's everyone I know who has currently been severely impacted by this. I'm still getting reports from friends and family. What more is there to say? So just a few things important to keep in mind. We're still at the very early days of this. As horrific as day one has been, the worst is yet to come. Israel is guaranteeing a retaliation unlike anything we've ever seen before. The retaliation will be against Hamas, but the primary victims of this retaliation are going to be civilians. There's no question about that. It's still unclear if there's going to be a ground invasion. It's still unclear if there's going to be reports from attacks from other fronts like Hezbollah in the north. We're really just taking this minute by minute and getting the information as it comes in. Just a little bit about what we're seeing. And anytime there's conflict, we see people continuously be radicalized, right? So one thing that's very easy to measure is the life lost. But there's an unseen cost of every conflict, and that's in the form of trauma and radicalization. These conflicts radicalize our populations. They bring us farther away from being oriented towards peace. It's very hard for populations that fear and hate each other to come together towards a peaceful resolution. And trauma can take many generations to heal. So when all is said and done, it wouldn't be surprising if we have thousands of civilians dead, but we're going to have millions of traumatized people, further traumatized than they were before, who are further radicalized and want nothing to do with the enemy, but see them gone. The enemy being the opposing population. So this is an unseen cost of these conflicts, one that's not reported on in the news and the media. What we're seeing on social media, as always, we see two distinct sides: Israel under attack, Palestine under attack. We see people doing polls. Who are you rooting for? We should be on the side of the people. We should be on the side of peace. Do I support Israel or do I support Palestine? I support the people of both sides, and I support a peaceful resolution. Many want to point out that what Hamas is doing is horrific, and there's no question about that. But many others want to point out that this is just the result of the conditions they've lived in. And that's also true, right? So two things can be true. We can understand and assess the environmental conditions that create a people who can support and commit such actions against civilians, but yet understand that those actions are horrific and detestable. Both can remain true. People often struggle. We're very binary minded and people want to just focus on one, but we can condemn Hamas and anybody supporting them and understand that these are horrific actions, and at the same time understand that people are not created in vacuums. There are conditions which create them. If we want to look towards solutions, we need to look at how do we create environmental conditions. So I think those are we'll end that with my opening thoughts. We are going to go to live updates. I see we do have a fair amount of people with us right now on TikTok. That's cool. Maybe we'll start doing more live streams on TikTok. If you're new, please subscribe. Our whole goal is to bring people together for dialogue and reconciliation. We need that now more than ever. A lot of people talk about how military is essential for security, and in a sense it is, but there's no better security than peace. So we must remain dedicated to peace. That's the solution. Cool. I'm going to open up Twitter. Twitter seems to have the best information. It shows just how legacy media is becoming less relevant. But last we've heard, we are seeing that there are at least over 100 Israeli casualties. Hold on, let me get the exact numbers of what they're saying. And we're not gonna. We'll show some photos. We're not gonna show the gruesome ones. I did show one yesterday, but I kind of regretted that. If there's a lot of horrific photos of people dead in the streets. And those tuning in, please share updates if you have any. Our ability to gain information and report will be increased by the crowd providing insights. So we actually already have one, Helena Bornfiend, saying we still don't know how many kids were killed at the party. That's true. There was a party with 3,000 people that was attacked. It says that less than 1,000 have already been in contact. So there's still a lot of people that are unaccounted for. Again, the Israeli media is not releasing too much information in terms of numbers. We've heard over 1,000 have been killed. Over 1,000 have been injured and over 100 have been killed. By the end of the day, I think those numbers are likely to increase. By the way, we were meant to have Kyle Hagan, our regular, join us, who always gives insightful analyses. 2 minutes before the live stream, he messaged me saying that there's rockets being shot over his head and that he can't join. So that is the situation. If anybody would like to join the stream, would love to have you. Actually, that might be challenging with streaming to 2 locations at once, but we'll see what we can do. One Twitter account I'm going to take you through who's doing great work, just covering the information. We'll see his updates. So Yoel Marson, thank you for the update. The last update is 150 civilians killed. Thank you. Let's share this screen. Okay, yep. The Daniels reporting provisional more than 150 confirmed fatalities, 1,100 wounded. The figures are far from final, and the firefights are still ongoing. At 8 p.m. Jerusalem time, there's been a major barrage of rockets headed towards Tel Aviv and Herzliya. That is where some of my family lives. We have hundreds of thousands in air raid shelters and reinforced safe rooms. No sirens in Jerusalem, but numerous booms are audible. He also goes on to say, Daniel says, wait, oh, sorry. I always forget to, we normally don't do this much screen sharing. I always forget to bring it up. He goes, their reports are just too shocking to post, numb from the carnage. Yeah, so it seems like the situation is even worse than what many think. IDF spokesperson has said right now there are currently 22 active firefights on the border with Gaza. There's also been reports of Hezbollah in the north coming towards the border. Supposedly Israeli military shot at them. There's also reports that say that Hezbollah plans to join the war if there's a ground invasion in Gaza. There very well may be a ground invasion. This is a security failure unlike ever seen before on Israel's part. It's likely to change the paradigm. It's one of Bibi's largest failures in a career riddled with failures. And he's not one to just accept failure. He now needs to save face. And him saving face will likely be in the form of retaliation unlike seen before, which he's saying is going to happen. So what does that actually look like? What does that mean? And, every few years there's some escalation with Gaza. Never to this extent, right? There's never been a full-on infiltration on their part and this many hostages taken. I think the number of hostages taken is reported at around the 50, but someone please correct me if there's new information. After every operation, it's kind of like business as usual. There's airstrikes, there's rockets, there's a ceasefire, civilians are killed, populations are radicalized, and the cycle continues. We essentially kick the can down the road. And the status quo will always produce more violence. That's something we need to remember. The status quo will always produce more violence. This seems like a level to where we won't just kick the can down the road, where it will actually be a paradigm shift. Now, unfortunately, the government, I don't trust to create a paradigm shift that is going to be long-term beneficial for peace between both sides, or that won't cause immense amount of civilian harm, specifically to one side. It seems like that's a likely outcome. I'd like to think that potentially a paradigm shift here can be peace, right? But as much of an optimist as I am, I don't have high hopes that that's what's going to happen. So it's going to take weeks, maybe even months, until we better understand. Many people are saying it's time to just destroy Hamas. If only it was that easy, it would have been done. To destroy Hamas means to either destroy all of Gaza, which will cause millions of civilian deaths, or it means doing a ground invasion, which will take many months and it's unclear if that's even a viable mission. To just give a comparison, remember the war in Iraq. It took, I think, a week or two till we captured Baghdad, and then there's that famous speech George Bush made with the mission accomplished sign behind him. Very few soldiers were killed to capture Baghdad, but in the years after, the U.S. dealt with insurgency and thousands of soldiers were killed. Israel would face something similar trying to overtake Gaza, and that's why it hasn't been done. It's unclear that it's viable, and it's unclear it's worth the cost of life. I'm seeing other people say that Israel should give Palestinians the opportunity to evacuate into Egypt and then flatten Gaza. Is that realistic? I don't know. Again, I'm not sharing what I think should happen. I'm trying to share all the potential outcomes of what might happen. Yeah, I do see there are people who want to join the live stream here on TikTok, but I will only do that if it can be heard projected onto YouTube. So, and again, I'm going to tell you from personal experience, bringing on random people from the internet, we get a lot of cringy views. We're going to give it a shot. If it doesn't go well, and again, this channel is really about bringing on people from all perspectives, but during these times when tensions are so high and people are literally being gunned down in the streets, it's not the time to let somebody on who's just going to be inflammatory. So I'm letting you know, AY on TikTok, I'm going to let you on in a moment. If it gets too inflammatory, we're going to end it. And also, if it can't be heard on the YouTube stream, we're going to end it as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. Obviously, that won't be your fault, but we're going to give it a shot. AY, what's up? Can you hear me? Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. How are you?
I'm good. Just give me a moment to see if those on YouTube can also hear. YouTube viewers, can you all hear? How should I refer to you? AY?
I don't mind.
Okay, AY. Can you all hear AY? AY, say a few words and let's see if the chat on YouTube can hear you.
Hello, YouTube.
Yeah, okay. It looks like people can hear you. Cool. How you doing, brother? Maybe introduce yourself. Let us know what's going on in your mind.
For me, listen, I'm neutral. I'm not from Palestine. I'm not from Israel. But as a neutral, of what I've heard, of what I've researched, for me, what Palestine are doing right now, they're taking back what's theirs. That's my opinion, honestly. For me, what Israel have done to Palestine, the way they've destroyed it, the way they've disrespected the religion, the people, it's disgraceful, honestly, it is. And there's a reason why so many people are saying free Palestine. Because I believe what Israel are doing, is just disgusting, honestly. I don't know how to say it, to be honest. It's disgusting. I don't know what your opinion is, but that's what I believe.
Cool. So thank you. I'm going to hold on. Let me see if I could. Speaker corner moment. Are people able to hear? Yes, I can hear them, but volume's low. Cool. Thanks for sharing. So essentially what you're describing is the reason for why these attacks are occurring, right? Palestinians are taking back what is theirs. But it's important to understand.
I think that's one of the reasons. I wouldn't say that's just the reason,
Yeah.
but that's one of them, yeah.
Look, I agree. I agree that desperate people are going to do things like this, right? When you're living a life of despair for so many years, for so many generations, you become radicalized by that. Radical people do radical things. That's what we're seeing. So I think we're in agreement there. But on one hand, it's important to understand how we got here, but it's also important to understand what impact will actually occur from this. So Palestinians are not taking back what's theirs because this isn't going to result in Palestinians having more land and more freedom. It's going to result in the opposite. All Palestinian violence for the past 100+ years has resulted in worse conditions and less land for the Palestinians. It's been their primary approach for 100 years, and it hasn't resulted in anything good besides bloodshed, besides less freedom and less land, right? So we could, on one hand, identify what the motivation for this is, but that doesn't mean it's ineffective action. It's actually entirely counterproductive, and the cost. And the cost of life on Palestinians is going to be tremendous. They're going to have less freedoms. Some amount of Gazans get to come into Israel to work. That will no longer happen. Their lives won't be better. The situation in the West Bank will also be worse, right? So again, I hear you. I sympathize with the Palestinians and their struggle, but their approach to that has always been to glorify violence and glorify the martyrs. Even now, right, we see in other conflicts when civilians are killed, the militants killing the civilians, they try to hide the crimes. But what we're seeing here, they're taking photos of them and cheering, and they're marching in the streets with dead civilians, right? So there's really a culture that glorifies violence. And again, cultures aren't created in vacuums, right? So it's important to understand how this culture was created. But we can also very clearly understand that in order to achieve peace, there needs to be a shift, and that shift needs to come from both sides. And violence has never worked for Palestinians, and I don't think it's going to start working now. So that's how I look at
The
it.
thing is, with that, you have to understand that Palestinians, they didn't start this violence that you're talking about. Like, Israel did start this. It's factually correct. They did. So for me, yes, Palestinians, for me, violence isn't the answer. It should never be the answer. But for me, sometimes, just sometimes, maybe violence has to be used to get back what's yours, to get back your rights, to protect your people.
So we could talk about the history. I would say that there's a strong case to be made that this conflict was started by Israel or by the early Zionists who, returned after thousands of years to a land that was occupied, that was inhabited by other people, and wanted to turn it into a Jewish homeland. It's not hard to understand why Palestinians would reject that. It's not hard to understand that at all. But and there were Palestinians who were displaced by early Zionists, right? What happened was early Zionists bought the land. They bought it legally. It doesn't mean it's moral, but they bought the land, and then some Palestinians were displaced. Palestinians didn't like the fact that they were being displaced, and they didn't like the fact that Jews were here trying to create a Jewish homeland. But the first act of physical violence actually came from the Palestinians as a result of the Zionist attempt to create a Jewish homeland, and that was the Hebron massacre in 1929, where hundreds of Jews were killed in Hebron. My family actually lived there at the time. So, it's not as straightforward where the violence started. It's true that prior to the Zionist movement, there wasn't nearly as much violence, but the Jews living here under Islamic rule were second-class citizens, right? It's not like we lived here as equal partners. So you could see why there was a motivation for Jews who were persecuted in Europe to try to create a homeland of their own, and why they didn't feel good about living under Arab rule because they were seen as second-class citizens. So it's a little bit more nuanced than pointing fingers who started it. And I also don't think it's entirely productive, because we could talk all day about who's at fault. I think we lost our friend. Anyways, thanks for joining us. But to finish that thought, we could talk all day about who's at fault, but that doesn't really help us reach a solution. At the end of the day, if we want to reach a solution, we both need to take responsibility. We both need to come together towards common ground, learn the narrative of the other, accept that there's a legitimacy to the narrative of the other, and work to build a unified narrative, a path towards peace and reconciliation. That's really the approach. I see we have a fair bit of comments here on YouTube. I'm going to start addressing them. Thanks to everybody tuning in. Justin, you want to join the live stream? I see you here in the chat. I'd love to have a Palestinian voice come on if you're interested. You're asking what is the alternative, or are you asking what's the alternative to violence? I've always said that Palestinians have done a great job turning their cause to be an internationally recognized cause. And if that cause had more of the ethos of, let's say, someone like Martin Luther King, one of nonviolence, I think they would have been far more effective. I think we've seen people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi defeat powers much more powerful than themselves through nonviolence. And when you're dealing with a population that still has the trauma of the Holocaust and hundreds of years of persecution in their blood, if you think that violence is going to work well on them, you're mistaken. I think this has been a major flaw to think that violence will work against Jews who built the land of Israel under the notion of never again will we be genocided like that. So attempts to genocide the Jews are just not going to land well. And I think we've seen that. The violence has not brought us closer to peaceful resolution. It's only brought us farther away. So massive peaceful revolution amongst Palestinians, I think, would have gotten us much further. Bill Johns asks, would a one-state solution be the answer? I think that the amount of fear and hate our populations have of one another, a one-state solution currently would be a disaster. If you look at the demographics on the land, it's around 50% Israeli, 50% Palestinian. They would be competing over governmental control. Populations that are culturally different, who don't speak the same language, who are traumatized by one another, and have a tremendous amount of fear and hate of one another. That's not a recipe for success. It's likely to lead to civil war, which we may cause more bloodshed than we've seen up until now. So I don't think a one-state solution would work in the short term. I think we could get there within a few generations. I think if we do want to talk in terms of one state, it would need to be a federation. So think kind of how the United States has many states in one country, or how Switzerland has many cantons. I think if you distribute the land and give communities more local control and have a distributed system like of checks and balances, and maybe like one unified government, an Israeli government, and a Palestinian government, I think that could potentially work, but not like a binational state democracy the way many describe it. It would need to be a little bit more sophisticated. And I think there's almost just as many problems with the two-state solution. So it's not like there's a clear solution here. Reading more comments. Please provide updates as you're getting them. It's hard for me to follow multiple threads. So Pittsburgh Dude 87 goes, Palestinian self-defense might make Israel think twice about continuing to infringe on their rights. It's too early to see what the outcome of all this will be. History tells us that is not the case. Palestinian self-defense or Palestinian violence, however you want to describe it, is not new. It's been the primary form of resistance from day one. And time again, we've seen that it has not caused progress, not to peace, and it has not made the lives of Palestinians better. A lot of the policies that Israel has implemented, which have made the lives of Palestinians hard, is under the pretenses of security against violence, right? So I think, if we look at the history, I don't think your analysis will come to fruition the way you think it will. Cool. I see Justin wants to join us. It'll be cool to have a Palestinian voice here. Sending you the link right now. TikTok. Okay, this is my first time streaming to TikTok as well. Algorithm is very different. It went from like 150 viewers to 11 within minutes. So it's interesting how that happens. Still learning more about this TikTok stuff. Thanks for everybody tuning in. The goal of this channel is to really bring people together for conversations focused on reconciliation, bring people together towards common ground. We focus on Israel Palestine a lot, and for the next weeks, we'll probably just do daily live streams just to bring more clarity. Oh, it looks like Tal, who couldn't join because Rocket Fire is ready. Cool. Yasmin goes, the problem is that Israel's idea of peace is the status quo, and Israel is comfortable and content with it. The Palestinians can't live with their current situation. They need a better future. Yeah, Yasmin, I agree completely. The status quo is unsustainable and will always produce more violence. We shouldn't be surprised by violence. We shouldn't. This is the result of the status quo. It always will be. So until the drastic change happens, the status quo changes. We're going to continue to see this. And Daniel goes, once the dust clears on this, subsequent status quo will be much worse for Palestinians. Yeah, I agree. That seems to be the case. Hey, Justin and Tal, welcome to you both. I have been I've been going for quite some time. So yeah, take it away. Maybe we'll start with Justin. Share your thoughts, and Tal, let us know what's going on with you.
Hello, good day. Sorry to talk to you guys after. The problem is it always takes a bad situation to bring people together. I consider Tal and Adar friends, and unfortunately, situations like this is what brings us together to talk. I wish it was under better circumstances. Um,
Thank you, man.
the loss of life on both sides is something very disturbing, very troublesome. But again, we have to go back to the same question: why does it take these type of events, this type of level of violence to get our attention? And I want to bring attention to the fact that this year in the West Bank, we've seen increase of I think it was something like thousands of attacks from settlers that are rampaging through Palestinian cities, and it is getting attention, and there are Israelis criticizing it. But the thing is that it's now that the table is turned, and I don't want to say, well, you're killing us, we're killing you. It's the same. It's that I'm not that kind of a person, but at the same time, this is not all coming out of a vacuum, and we really, really need to acknowledge this. And there's two reactions. There's the reaction of let's just let emotions drive, let's just let anger drive, and let us just start. Hey, we need to retaliate, we need to kill, but there also is something called rationality. We need to say, what is the problem? What's going on? Why are people able to cheer on death and destruction? And no, because we know, for example, that Hamas does not have the capability to wage a long-term war with Israel. These armed men are going to basically send a message saying that our resistance is still alive. But long-term, we know what's going to happen. It'll probably result in the death of thousands. It'll probably, continue. We're gonna, like I said, electricity is being turned off in Gaza right now. Electricity comes from Israel. The border is controlled by Egypt and Israel. So long term, these acts are going to hurt. So we know that this is not going to create the dent. It's people are panicking, people are scared, rightly so. But but we know that long term it's not. But the thing is that what makes somebody in such a weak position commit such a drastic act? And that's what I think should be the subject of where we should focus on. And it's because whether, like, Gaza was calm for over a year, right? It's been about a year, would you say, Tal? A year or so?
About a year. Even more, because there's also differentiation between Hamas and the other. Like, Hamas hasn't been involved in fighting for quite some time.
There's been some rocket fire from the Islamic Jihad, but it's been
Islamic Jihad has been renegade. But
Yeah.
even I know for a fact that Hamas has even arrested people in Islamic Jihad for launching rockets, because they are they have an incentive right now because of they're dealing with Egypt and with Qatar to keep the quiet. In fact, I was shocked about what happened, because this to me is going to be a financial blow to Hamas, who's very concerned about their finance. I'm actually to be honest with you, I think that the top officials of Hamas are really outraged right now, because I honestly think that there's a group in Hamas, I want to say a younger generation, not the old folks who are running the corporate side of it. I think these are the guys who are out of control right now, and I think they're the ones who are leading the show right now. I think the older guys are just giving us rhetoric because they know this is the end of our lifeline. This is going to critically hurt our lifeline, and so I think that from that point, it's the long term. It wasn't a good move for their part. But what I'm trying to reconcile is that whether we are at peace, whether things are quiet, or whether we're violent, the only difference is, we're still getting military raids, we're still having an occupation, we're not going anywhere. So I don't know what you expect the people of Gaza to do. That's
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I appreciate your fair and balanced approach on this. Tal, do you want to respond, or?
So I think that when it comes to the attack, it's also understanding, when we talk about Palestinian resistance, it's brought up a lot today about Resolution 3743. That's the main claim of being able to resist against the state of Israel. through armed resistance. So I'll read out the actual, before I discuss it, what it actually says. It says, reaffirms the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples for independence, territorial integrity, national unity, and liberation from colonial and foreign domination, foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle. However, what it doesn't allow you to do is to kill unarmed combatants or individuals who are not participating in fighting. This is something that's very clear in international law, but people love to forget these things. Within the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Hamas militants attacking an IDF base or firing a rocket at a tank is within the right or within the context of a war between Palestinians and the Israel Defense Force. But going through a town, whether you consider it illegal or not, is not protected under international law to then go out and kill men, women, and children who are not armed combatants. Even individuals who are living within the West Bank, who are considered illegal settlers also by the international community, are not then subjugated to being armed combatants who are allowed to be killed and not considered war crimes. Only attacks against armed military targets, which is people in uniform or people who are carrying a gun, are allowed to be attacked. If you start opening that, this is one of the reasons that international law exists, is that if you start opening that to saying they're an extension of the government or their extension, then you can also say that it's okay to kill every single American citizen because they pay taxes to a government that funds wars in other different countries, or anything you want. You can extend it to anything, or allow yourself to kill a kid because potentially he might grow up to be a soldier one day. This type of mentality leads to more and more and more violence. There's a huge difference between killing an armed combatant, which is a soldier or a militant, and an unarmed civilian who is not in active duty. Hamas militants currently taking Israeli citizens, civilians, hostage is a war crime, and is something that should be condemned across the board, even if you are in support of Palestinian resistance against the state of Israel. The state of Israel and its military attacking its citizens, its civilians, is not, in my opinion, a part of that resistance, and it doesn't lead you anywhere. And two wrongs don't make a right. Just as Justin said, the pogroms that occurred with radical Israeli elements that attacked innocent Palestinians' homes and fired upon them is also something that is illegal under international law. It's not allowed, and these people should have been prosecuted for this. But it doesn't give you the right to then retaliate and say, now I can kill civilians. The same thing regarding Ukraine and Russia. Most of the individuals that are currently being killed within that conflict are soldiers fighting soldiers. But in the different events that we have seen civilians getting killed, that also has a question. Are the civilians directly being killed, or are they a result of a greater military operation? For example, if Hamas militants were entering an Israeli base and they were killing Israeli soldiers, and then there was a civilian there, but they didn't know that they're going right now to kill soldiers, then that wouldn't be considered a war crime under international law. But going into Israeli community centers like Sderot, Ofakim, and other communities and just shooting randomly, indiscriminately people in a crowd, or going to a party in the desert there and shooting into the crowds of people is indiscriminate fire. It is a direct war crime, and it's against international law. Now, you could say, I don't care about international law, but then you can't use international law to then justify resistance. You either have to play by the book and go by all of the condemnations, or you can just switch around your morality and decide when something is okay in my book and not okay in your book. But you have to choose. Either you play by the book of what we currently have in international law, or you don't.
Thank you, Tom. Just to build on that, because he did ask what else could be done. So, I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, because I think I actually think on both sides there's a lack of interest and a lack of creativity and attention on what can be done differently. Right? The military in Israel is praised. Militants in Gaza are praised. They're heroes. Peacemakers on both sides are mocked. We have a society that is oriented towards militarism and not towards peace. If we can create a situation where the peacemaker is praised to the same extent, if not more, than the soldier, that is a population that's oriented towards peace. We're far from it. And again, a lot of this is a result to environmental conditions. A lot of it is a result of other cultural issues that have existed in the Middle East prior to the conflict existing. But let's just talk about some things. 20% of Israel's population are Palestinians, Palestinian citizens of Israel. That's a massive economic force. One of the ways that the civil rights movement was effective was by boycotts, right? They used their collective economic power to pressure government. Israeli Palestinian citizens of Israel can do that. They can also be more active in the political process. For the first time in Israel's history, we had a Palestinian in government, in the coalition. I don't know what the number is now, but traditionally most Palestinians don't vote. In East Jerusalem, Palestinians are not voting. They're not using their political right to change the situation. Again, so it seems like a short-sighted approach that's based on honor, but not really grounded in a rationale that's going to bring us towards a peaceful resolution. Palestinians in the West Bank can have massive peaceful protests. Imagine if the narrative was not the most vocal voices in Palestinian society was not we need to remove Jews from the land, or Jews can live here but they'll live under us, but instead we'll live side by side with Jews, we'll be at peace with them, we just want equality, and we're going to resist peacefully until that happens. If that was the common narrative, and not terrorists being glorified, then Israelis would feel a lot more comfortable with building a society side by side with Palestinians, right? So these are all things that Palestinians can do to create a situation that brings us closer to peace. And I often talk about what Israel can do. It's not about this is Palestinians' fault, this is their responsibility. No, this is both their responsibility. When there's a conflict, you ask what each side can do, but you ask what else can Palestinians do? So that's a whole bunch that Palestinians can do to bring us closer to peace.
Adark, if I can say, I agree with you. But the thing is that, to go back to what you said, that the people who do support peace and reconciliation, we're laughing stocks right now. They laugh at us.
Right.
And why do they laugh at us? Because what you just described right now, Hanan Ashrawi, who was one of the chief negotiators during the times of the Madrid meetings and later the negotiations that before Oslo, and who became, I believe, education minister, and was a member of parliament. She resigned. She's very well known. And she gave an interview about the 30-year anniversary of the Oslo Accords, and she said something very interesting, that when she was negotiating with the Israeli team of Madrid, that they would come back to Palestine, to the West Bank, and have town hall meetings with people. And the level of support was about 87% of people actually backed the coexistence plan. And we thought in the 90s, when Oslo first came, we said, okay, here's a chance. You actually had the people, the Palestinian population. It was so easy to say, for the first time in my life, I was young at the time, people were saying Israel, Palestine, Jew, before they weren't saying that. They were actually acknowledging it. It became sort of something accepted. But the thing is that, and it goes back to what I'm saying before, as far as what is the alternative, whether we come to peace, whether we're quiet, whether we're not mobilizing resistance, armed resistance and stuff, the result is the same. We still have an occupation. We still have settlers running around with their supremacy. We still have checkpoints and walls. And you can say, well, it's a result of this. It's a result of this. Nothing is changing that is saying, and that's why when I go and tell people, hey, we're going to have a peace group, we're going to have a nonviolent, and even in the West where we live, you and I live right now, they're criminalizing nonviolence. It's right now, they're trying to find ways to criminalize BDS, to tell me that if I boycott something, I'm committing a crime. So we don't have the clout for these nonviolent movements and stuff, is because literally, we're fighting that front as well. So if I say I'm a Palestinian, let's support some other measures, nonviolent measures, I'm labeled an anti-Semite. I'm labeled a Jew hater, a racist, and now even a criminal. And these are the reasons why sometimes we're being laughed at.
So thank you, just real quick before I respond, I'm doing this on TikTok as well. I'm going to sign off TikTok, but if anybody on TikTok wants to continue, you can find a link to the YouTube channel in the description. Signing out. Love you all. Cool. And we're going to continue this on YouTube. Yoav, I see you want to join the stream. Let's just get yourself a better looking thumbnail, and we'll get you on just so the aesthetic is pleasant to the viewers. So yeah, you did share a bunch of reasons, things getting in the way of why peaceful resistance, the challenges faced with peaceful resistance. But peaceful resistance is never easy, and with every challenge you could have for peaceful resistance, you have many more for violent resistance. So I don't really view that as a reason why it can't be effective. I think it's a reason why it's more challenging. But also at the end of the day, we need to, like, Palestinians have done a tremendous job turning their struggle international. The amount of attention the Israel-Palestine conflict gets, proportionate to the amount of lives that are impacted, it's truly disproportionate. So Palestinians have succeeded on a tremendous scale to make their struggle international. I think they would have even more support if their approach was a more peaceful one, right? A lot of the resistance Palestinians get is when they see that targets, when they see that terrorists are glorified, when they see bodies of civilians dragged through the streets and people cheering. This makes the international community, makes it harder for people to support the Palestinian cause. So,
but why don't you see the same outrage from the settlers and what they do? Like what happened in Hawara just 2 days ago, when settlers put a Sukkot tent in the middle of a Palestinian populated area, shut down their shops, chased them, burned their cars, and did that. Why did we not get the same type of reaction? And I'm not trying to say one is better than the other.
I think this is an interesting point. So Tal left. I wonder if there was sirens and he had to go. Hopefully everything's okay. But I've never been able to coherently explain media bias, because Israelis are convinced that the media is biased, international media is biased against them, and Palestinians are convinced that it's biased against them. And I think that, and I don't have a clear answer. For example, for like, let me just break it down, because it's not, this is one of the things that really isn't black and white. For example, often we see headlines from like the New York Times or BBC, how they frame things. Let's say there's like an attack on civilians, on Israeli civilians. BBC can say fighting between Israelis and Palestinians, right? They won't say who started it, but if Israel attacks first, they'll say Israel attacks Gaza, right? So that's a clear bias against Israel. The counter argument is that Israel often gets away with crimes and gets a green light on many things that other countries wouldn't from the media. So I think the problem is we try to understand media bias as a monolith, but I think it's actually less monolithic than people think, and there's a bias going on both sides. But I don't think that, I think any time that Israel does something, I think it floods social media for sure, and I think also legacy media talks about it. I think if there was ever an attack similar to this, like imagine something comparable Israel doing, going in, targeting civilians, kidnapping people, dragging them through the streets, it would garner probably more media attention than what's this is garnering, right? So I don't know if it's entirely true that Israel gets a free pass on this kind of stuff. And I'll tell you another thing, trying to like criminalize BDS, I think that's obviously the wrong approach. I think generally speaking,
and the comment is they're trying. I'm not saying they did criminalize it, because there's a comment here saying that where do you live in the U.S. that it's not. I'm not saying that it is crime. I'm saying that there are many laws that are being introduced and trying to, and even court cases where they are trying to criminalize it. And in countries like Germany, they've actually succeeded. So yeah, it is something that's happening. So I'm not. I mean, someone just said that I'm a liar or something, but no. I'm telling the truth, and it's happening.
Justin, one of the most good faith actors we have here.
Yeah. And the thing is, I want to go back to what Tal was saying about like, the problem in this particular conflict is propaganda. Propaganda is like so crazy with the Palestine-Israel conflict, and from both sides. And I don't want to say one thing that like, it's almost I'm almost ashamed to say, like, I had tears today. I cried. I literally cried. I'm a grown man and I'm crying because what made me more sad was, hold on one second.
Yeah, all good. We're gonna bring on Yoav in the meantime.
Yeah, I was saying, what made me really sad today, more than the killing, more than the consequences, more than what we're probably going to see, was the fact that the Palestinian youth that were cheering the bodies and stuff. And here's the thing: there's videos showing where, like, for example, the statement made by Mohammed Dais, who was the spokesperson announcing what they were doing, the operation. He actually did say something interesting. He said, "Don't attack women, don't attack children." He did say that, but the thing is, we're more focused on the negative, because the videos that are being flooded, and it's because they're happening, and of course people are going to focus on that, is the bodies of people. And I've heard things like saying, "Look, they're raping women, they're stripping them of their clothes and raping them and spitting on their bodies and stuff like that." And to me, it's like, what I'm really upset with right now is the loss of morality. Like, literally, like, is this our humanity right now? And I'm very concerned as a Palestinian because I feel like the situation is just so bad right now that, like, this is worse than losing our land. This is worse than losing our nationhood, is our morality, because that's the only thing we had. We are morally superior in this conflict because we're the victims, and we are the ones. If we lose our morality, then literally we've lost. And this is something that I think is more important than anything. And that's why what Tal was saying. But it's like what he was saying earlier about if we want to attack the army, if we want to attack the settlers, like these armed groups, they do that, then we can say, yes, this is justified. But the fact that we're going and just like anybody from both sides is just killing one person or the other just because they're a civilian of who they are, that's what makes this worse. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree, brother. Thanks for sharing that. Yoav, welcome to the stream. Great to have you here. What's on your mind?
No, I was actually going to say something similar to Justin. I saw a post on Reddit. I really think this is a lost day for the Palestinian cause. Like, at least as far as I know, the barbarism and the sadistic behavior of Hamas has never been so clearly on display like this. And I completely understand what Justin says, that once you lose your integrity, your morality, you've really lost everything. And I think many people would not sympathize with the Palestinians seeing this barbarism and this brutality. It's really something else. At least, I always would think that Hamas were a terror group, but I could maybe put myself in the Palestinians' shoes and see how they might use them as freedom fighters. But not to sound over the top, but like the Nazi-like barbarism seen today, at least for me, it's completely wiped any shred of sympathy I may have had for Hamas.
Thanks, Yoav. It is interesting to see how this is going to shift international support. I'm not entirely convinced it's going to change much in terms of Hamas's support. People have short memories, but I think the retaliation that we're going to see from Israel is going to get people to very quickly forget about what Hamas did and sympathize with them. Again, unclear, but the worst is yet to come in terms of death and destruction. So how will people feel after that? I'm not sure. It will be interesting. And I could say with fair confidence that I think Hamas will gain popularity amongst Palestinians, which is unfortunate, and which Israelis view that as just a sign that you have no one to work with, you have no partner for peace. So yeah, I guess time will tell.
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't think that the barbaric nature of this attack is any different in its nature than other attacks that have happened from different militant groups in the past. I think it's that it's all on video. It's all shown. I remember, if you try to look online of videos of the first Intifada or the second Intifada, there's not many videos and photos online. It was much more taboo for Israeli media to showcase the bodies, and it wasn't normal that every single person had a video camera. So you wouldn't see it. It was only very, very specific images that you would see that were quite gruesome. But in our day and age, I mean, I've been following relatively closely the war in Ukraine, and I mean, the videos come out every day. I mean, sometimes it's just 15, 20 soldiers dead like that, like in an instant, and just getting shot up, like this gruesome reality of how easily life is taken. And this is one of the reasons that they filmed everything. They had GoPro cameras on. They had proper editing teams waiting in the back to put it into a video format to then put it out. Like, this was a part of the psychological warfare, was making sure that everybody sees these videos. There was a report already of I think it was an Israeli guy who saw his father kidnapped in Gaza. That's how he knew that he was kidnapped. The psychological toll that this has. Every time I see a photo of a civilian or a soldier kidnapped, I'm looking at the faces to try to see if I recognize any of them. I have friends of mine who have been sent out to the reserves, and it's always that scary thing. Every time you open a video, are you going to see someone that you love? Which makes it even more painful than it already is. And I think that it's not that the barbaric nature of these type of individuals and attacks has changed. I mean, if you read their charter, it's quite obvious what they believe and what they'd like to do to Jews and Israelis. But now we have a first row seat to what that looks like. In the past, it was told by eyewitness accounts. I mean, if you just look at eyewitness accounts of the Fogel family or the Sbarro restaurant bombing or the bombing of the restaurant in Pesach where they blew up the restaurant, and you hear about these horrific stories, but there's a difference between hearing of a story and then looking at a video or a photo and actually seeing the carnage in front of your eyes and what that does to you as a person.
That's true.
Tal, real quick, I'm seeing on Twitter that a few minutes ago there was a huge barrage from Gaza towards central Israel.
We had some explosions. We had a lot of explosions, so we ran to the shelter a few times. There was two of my friends. One friend, I'm not going to say exactly where, just for intelligence reasons, but one of my friends, one fell right down next to his house, and another one about 500 meters away. Thankfully, they're both okay, but I know that there's 2 critical casualties in Rishon LeZion from the rocket barrage.
Very sad. Do we have more updates on the situation? Is anybody getting information in terms of casualties?
It's officially raised to 200.
200 deaths.
Yeah, Israeli casualties. I think I'm seeing reports from the Palestinian side, but the only issue is it's hard to know whether or not it's the militants. Like, are they counting the militants that went into Israel or the civilians who have been killed in the airstrikes? But they said it's roughly around 200 and 1,600 injured, but it's hard to know at the moment. We have to wait a little bit longer to see exactly what those casualty numbers are.
Right, and somebody said that the majority of the people who are at this festival in the south are yet to be accounted for. Again, this is unconfirmed, but supposedly there were 3,000 people at this party, and only around 1,000 have been accounted for. So it's unclear what's going on with that. I still don't know if or how many friends I had there. Yeah, I did wake up to discover that 2 of my sister's friends, including their 3-year-old daughter and parents, were kidnapped last night or early this morning. So that's definitely weighing on me and on my family. and the history of kidnapped Israelis is not good. So I don't have such high hopes, unfortunately.
Just in case there's any ambiguity, I wholly condemn these individuals, and I have no issue with Israel striking every single one of these individuals who participated in this attack today with the full force of the IDF. And sadly, that'll come at the expense of a lot of innocent people. And I wish that we had lasers where we could immediately just kill those who were involved in the attacks today on innocent people and kill them. And I have no issue saying that.
And in terms of civilians being killed, supposedly, Israel has this policy where before they drop a bomb on a building where they think there might be civilians, they give a warning. They give like a knock on the roof with, they drop like not a bomb, but they drop something on the roof to warn. So supposedly they're not going to be doing that anymore.
So there's
I don't
also
understand the strategic advantage to stopping that. It's unclear, but that seems to be a change in policy on the Israeli side.
Well, they don't. I think there's also a little bit of a misconception there about the knocking. So just people who don't know what the roof knocking policy is, it's that there's this policy that before the IDF strikes a building in Gaza, they hit it with a lighter round of munition that doesn't do any damage, but it's very, very loud, and it warns the people inside that they're going to take down the building. And so that's why a lot of the times when the IDF strikes a building in Gaza, you actually have video footage of it because they know it's going to happen. Like the media tower of Al Jazeera a few years ago, so they knew it was going to get taken down, so no one was in there. This isn't always the case, though. I think it's important to realize that they're not always doing this. They only do this when they're specifically trying to take out the buildings themselves. Why are they doing this? Is this just due to psychological warfare? Is it a collective punishment, which would be a war crime? Is it other reasons? I don't know. Like that's up to the intelligence agencies that I don't have. If we got leaks from them that I could know, but I don't know what the reasoning behind those are. But the strikes, for example, I think last year in 2022, the strikes on the 2 apartment complexes that killed senior heads of, I think it was the Islamic Jihad, and 3 senior heads of the Islamic Jihad, but also killed their entire families. There was no roof knocking. That was an assassination of these Islamic militants. And so when there's specifically assassinations of militant targets, sometimes those are when there are collateral damage and civilians are killed in the events.
Good to know. Thanks for that, Tal. For those just tuning in, this is Sulha. The goal of this channel is to really bring people together for conversations. We bring a lot of Israelis and Palestinians together for dialogue. The goal of this channel really is reconciliation on many topics, but we do have a primary focus on Israel Palestine.
And to touch base on what Tal said when he said that he's supporting the use of force against the people who kidnapped Israelis, holding them hostage and committed these acts. I think that we have to be very clear, because like right now I'm reading reports of attacks right now in Bethlehem and Ramallah and Nablus area. So right now, as we're speaking, settlers are using this as an opportunity. This is one of the biggest fears I had about this event, was that the extreme right in Israel, they're just waiting for an excuse to do more of what they're doing. And I don't want to say, I don't want to say like, hey, nobody can resort to violence, because this is, sometimes you have to respond with violence against violence, but we have to have rational thinking here. And for example, when we say, I want to say we have to avoid violence at all costs unless there's a legitimate reason, inherent right to, because we all have a right to self-defense according to international law. And Tal, he explained it very well. Defending yourself against an army, defending yourself against a checkpoint, defending yourself against a group of militants, or like the Hilltop Youth, if they're going to go raid a Palestinian city, Palestinians should have the right. And I think this is understood, and I think Tal agrees with this as well, is that we have to use this force. And Israel, being the power here, is, you're more responsible because you have weapons that can cause a lot of destruction. It's like, taking out a whole neighborhood. This is a moral issue that you have to go through to reconcile. Is it worth it to annihilate a whole neighborhood or thousands of people because of the few? And some might say yes. I'm not going to make that judgment. But the issue that I have is that let's just say that Palestinian militants in the West Bank, who I've said, hey, it doesn't justify. I don't see a point. Why are you going to an Israeli city like Tel Aviv or Sderot or something and attacking people? If these militants were to focus their attention, oh, it's going again. Be careful, bro. Be careful. If they were to focus their resistance, their militancy and stuff against those who perpetrate acts of crimes against them, like attacking their cities, attacking, putting military checkpoints in their city and stuff, then we can say that, hey, you do have the right. But we know that if a Palestinian group kills an Israeli soldier or even a civilian, okay, we know one is morally wrong. The civilian had nothing to do with it. It's just a civilian. Maybe he was shopping, he was getting some gas, or he was walking his dog, whatever. But the other, for Israel, it's the same thing. Like you're making, like I see how many Israelis, they say, okay, there's a moral difference. One guy is killing civilians and the other one is killing armed combatants. But even if a Palestinian in the West Bank, and the reason why Palestinians don't fight back against these settler attacks is because if one of them gets killed, you're going to have the army come in and just really, I don't know, blow up a person's house, arrest them, arrest people, and it's going to be a nightmare for them.
Yeah, and you first of all, hopefully Tal's okay. We saw you had to run off. I guess there's more rocket fire. He's in central Israel. That actually is one of my greatest concerns, the infighting we're going to see. In 2001, the last escalation between Gaza and Israel, that escalation we didn't see anything new between Gaza and Israel, but what was new was Palestinian citizens of Israel and Jewish citizens of Israel fighting one another in the streets, which is maybe the most concerning, because this infighting can really cause not only more lives lost, but a deeper tear in the fabric between us. The many on the right have always said we can't trust Palestinians; they could turn on us at any moment, right? And then we saw a turning of fellow citizens on the Jewish population, and Palestinians, who are 20% of the population, so the minority, feel less secure than ever before, seeing that there's Jews willing to attack them in the streets. It seems very likely that we're going to see another round of infighting, and it affects the morale in a way that's undescribable, because the fact that you do have 20% of citizens of Israel being Palestinian, and it's not that the relations are far from perfect, but there's many areas where it's quite beautiful. Like you go to the north, you have Palestinian towns, both Christian and Muslim, you have Jews, and everyone's friends. It's not like they're intermarrying or anything like that, but we go to each other's towns for shopping, each other's restaurants. There's a harmony there, and it's beautiful. But then when we see inability for fellow citizens to turn on one another, it makes us question how real and steady this harmony actually is. So that's something that's really sitting on me that I hope doesn't escalate too greatly this time. And yeah, we're seeing more and more vigilante groups and a radicalization of settlers who are taking matters into their own hands. So I think we are going to see a fair bit of that. Somebody said Biden is about to make an address. Should we watch it? Should we just stream it? I mean, he's just so uninteresting, He doesn't even know what he's talking about.
I'll probably fall asleep.
Yeah, and I barely slept last night. So Tal had to go into shelter because there was rocket fire. Colleen is asking. So he should be back as soon as...
this touches, what you just said also touches base on people who, like peace activists like yourself, is that the reason why, when you talk peace, when you work for peace, the common man, woman needs substance, because the reason is that I don't know. Are you following Discord? The comments on Discord? Discord got pretty heated yesterday. The chat, and one thing that Lightstone said yesterday that I thought was very accurate was that this sets us back about 20 years. I think he said 20 or 30 years or something like that. that the solution that maybe could have been worked out in 2 years, 5 years from now, who knows, we've actually gone backwards. And I think that's very accurate, that no matter how much we talk peace, like me and you, we can talk and we send messages to each other and we have ideas and stuff like that. We can have good conversations. But at the same time, if there's nothing going on the side that's improving the conditions and stuff like that, just like that, that, like, what's the name of that game where you put the sticks and if one falls, the whole thing collapses?
Jenga.
Jenga, there you go. Yeah.
Great game.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about this situation, because if we move that one little thing and it's unstable, it collapses, and guess what? We start all over again. And I feel that's kind of where we're at right now. And but a lot of people are like, we're really surprised what's happening right now. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not surprised. In fact, I said it 2 days ago. I said, literally. And here's another thing, we haven't mentioned this, but like the what's going on right now between Israel and Saudi Arabia, I think that this has a lot to do with what's going on right now, because this was a message,
right?
This was a message to the Arab world that is trying to make normalization agreements, and Netanyahu, who's trying to bypass the Palestinian issue to make normalization with key Arab countries like Saudi Arabia. You are not going to do this on behalf of the Palestinians. You are not going, we have now Mohammed bin Salman, who's trying to say, I want to do good for the Palestinians. It's like, no, you don't. You want to do good for you. You want to bypass us to make your, business arrangements or economic stability for your country, etc. And this is reason when you say, why are Palestinians like now vocally supporting what's going on? Why are they supporting militancy? Is because they're being sidelined. They are being isolated. Palestinians right now feel more alone than ever, not just from Israel and the West, but even from the Arab world. We feel like we're being sidelined. We're being shelved. We're being told, hey, your opinion doesn't matter. We're controlling everything right now. So today, as a Palestinian, many are saying, you know what? We still got it. We still got it. We still got the urge to resist. You see, you thought we were asleep. You thought we were about to give up and surrender. Nope. This shows you we're in the game still. And that's a very powerful. Sorry, that's a very, very powerful feeling to have, especially when a person. And this guy Chris is really obsessed with me. He's asking questions left and right. And he mentioned Black September. Black September is a perfect example. Militarily, it was a terrible defeat for the Palestinians, but politically, it was good because it established the PLO and the Palestinians as those who have right over their cause, and not Jordan or Jamal Abdel Nasser or Egypt. So,
yeah, Yoav, did you want to chime in?
I just wanted to add that also strategically, if the Israeli response has a large humanitarian cost, which is likely, then that could get rid of the deal with the Saudis. If like thousands of Palestinian civilians, Gazans, are killed, then it's very possible that the deal with Saudi wouldn't be possible.
I agree. I think the only potential political gain for Hamas is stopping the normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which benefits Iran. So, they think that Iran helped coordinate this attack, and that's part of the motivation behind it, which is quite possible. So if we want to look at what benefit can come, it's that, but it seems like just the amount of death and destruction on Palestinians over the next few weeks is definitely not going to make it worth it. And it's also not even clear that normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia is long-term bad for Palestinians. I think that a more unified Middle East ultimately may help us lead to a peaceful resolution. And not necessarily, it could just mean Palestinians get more neglected and have less of a say at the negotiating table. But if Saudi Arabia starts to become involved in the peace process, and Egypt is involved in the peace process, and you have different Middle Eastern Arab states that are involved in the peace process that are not just looking at it as how do we destroy Israel, which has been the common approach, but how do we find a peaceful resolution, and there's kind of a coalition amongst Middle Eastern states, I actually think that might be a peaceful resolution. So it might be strategic to achieving the goal of ending normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, but it's not strategic. I'm not sure it's strategic towards peace on the land of Israel and Palestine, and certainly not in the short term with the amount of bloodshed we're seeing and we'll continue to see. There's some videos on Twitter that if people want to get updated, maybe we'll do a little. Kyle, all good on your end?
Yeah, more sirens, more explosions.
More sirens. Okay, we're good to hear that you're counting. I'm going to do a screen share. There's some footage on Twitter that we'll look at together. And if somebody can find, supposedly Biden is doing his address, doing a live address. We can watch a few minutes. If he starts falling asleep, we'll change it. But if somebody maybe in the meantime can find a link to that.
I'm going to send you a video of a peace activist, Alon Green. I don't know if you follow him.
No, I don't think so.
Let me send it to you. 1 second.
Um,
He's actually responding to the sirens, and he has a unique perspective, sort of.
Cool. Yeah, I'm happy to check it out. Yes, anyone in chat, send us interesting things. So here we have people at Ben Gurion Airport, Israel's main airport, taking cover. So there's still some flights that land at Ben Gurion that you don't have the tunnel to get off the plane. You get off and get on a bus. So it seems like they were in between the plane and the bus when this happened. What else we got? Oh no, I lost it.
I've got to go. Be safe, guys.
Yoav, thank you for joining.
Take care, bro.
So this video is hard to watch. You know, there was the festival that was attacked. Here you see an Israeli girl being captured by Yeah, that's hard to watch. You're seeing hostages be taken. This is her.
I spoke to somebody from Gaza today, and he told me something interesting. He said that a lot of the people that are crossing are actually even not like part of any militant groups. He's saying that right now there's crimes of opportunity right now. He's saying there's actually people going to like to commit crimes, but they have no political affiliation,
right,
or anything. So we have to remember that some of these videos, and again, I'm not trying to like sugarcoat anything, but again, this conflict is so filled with propaganda that a lot of people are going to be like, we're going to go loot, we're going to go steal, we're going to go do this, because they're criminals. That's what criminals do.
Yeah.
So the thing regarding the kidnapping. So also, if you look at I don't 100% agree with that, because it seems like the main mission of them was to kidnap people, as many as possible, because they came well armed to all these different brigades. We had the PFLP, we had the Al-Qassam brigades, the Hamas, tons of different Palestinian militant groups that all work together. And it seems later on, once they had essentially completed the majority of their mission, they started heading back into Gaza with the hostages and the bodies and the equipment. And then they started opening up the fence and allowing all the regular Palestinians to just come in. And it seems like that's who a lot of the people that have just been caught by Israeli security forces is these individuals. Because if you look at the photos, of course they strip search them, but if you look at how they're dressed, they're not dressed like the militants. The militants did have a certain type of attire to them and how they were looking. And so my assume is that the majority of the actual militants have already left back to Gaza, because they've completed their mission by massacring hundreds of individuals and civilians and soldiers, and also kidnapping. And now the individuals who are currently still in Israel are, I guess, lone militant groups, not the main factions, and a lot of random Palestinians that are just as crime of opportunity. But there was fighting even late in the day. We know that Palestinian militants came back into Sderot much later on in the day and continued fighting there and shooting at civilians.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Why did our comments disappear? Did I fuck something up by mistake?
Someone just called me evil.
Yeah, I know.
No problem. I've been called worse.
No. But Daniel and Lior should not have been banned for their comments. Nothing but God. We could get rid of him. He's a loser. He's calling you evil. He's calling you stupid.
Okay.
If you can't engage respectfully, if you disagree, share why. But just name calling is just the lowest form of conversation. So either grow up
And they're welcome to join, right?
Yeah, you could join, either grow up or get out, you know. But Tyler, are you able to go to the YouTube page and unban Daniel and Lior? I think that was a mistake. They didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Sorry, Daniel and Lior. We will bring you back. Nothing but God. If you want to come engage respectfully and share why you disagree instead of name calling, we'd love to have you on. But we don't need to facilitate your loser mentality. With all due respect. Isn't it interesting that when people say "with all due respect," it's normally followed by something not respectful at all? It's interesting.
And thank you for the compliment, Chris. He says that I sound like a U.S. citizen. Okay, thank you. That means my English is great. So
cool. Yeah, I think we all do it. I think we all do, actually.
Yeah. So thank you. That's a compliment.
Cool. I'm gonna share some more videos.
Did you see the one I sent you?
No, where'd you send it?
I sent it to your WhatsApp. It's just a quick comment from Alon Lee. I respect Alon Lee a lot. He's one of those people.
We're gonna watch it.
What words I can use to describe the terror and fear that we're facing here today in Israel. People are being dragged and killed and slaughtered in the south of Israel. They're being dragged from beneath their beds, from the safe houses, by armed people that are looking to hurt innocent people. Children, women, men, and it needs to be said in the clearest way possible that hurting innocent people is not justified. And even if the cause is freedom, and even if people are looking to fight for their own rights, you cannot do this. You cannot hurt innocent people. But another thing needs to be said today. This reality was not born today. This is a reality that we're facing for many, many, many years. A reality of occupation, of controlling millions of people that are living with no rights, with no freedom, with no independence. And as long as we're continuing, this is an alarm going right now here in Israel. I need to go. As long as we're continuing this reality, no one will be safe. We need to go in the opposite direction, a direction of peace and, living with rights and equality for everyone. I need to go now.
Yeah, cool. That's very much the ethos of our show here.
And that's why I said I respect him, because at the same time he condemns what's going on, and we should condemn.
Right.
We shouldn't lose our focus of what we need to do to solve it. We need to be rational and look at how do we solve it. Not like, for example, there was people yesterday saying we need to go back and establish the settlement of Gush Katif. Like, does that sound like a solution to go put that settlement back and move 7,000 Israelis into Gaza? It's ridiculous, right?
No, probably not. Yeah. Let's do a few more videos. So here's the recent one. Oh, this is God that.
I think we are. I think Justin. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, I was saying that. One sec. There was a attempted. I don't know if it was a stabbing, but there was an attempted attack in Jerusalem. It was stopped though.
Okay.
Right now, just a few minutes ago. But what I was going to say was that it's something I was telling Adar in the morning is that this operation, this attack by Hamas and other.
Oh, real quick, just because it's on the screen, do you know if this has been confirmed that Israeli helicopters have been shot down?
No, it's fake, and it's very obviously fake.
Okay.
That video.
Right, it seems kind of like a CGI, like a video game. You just can't trust what you see, huh? Justin.
That's the danger of these Twitter and these other things. Like, for example, before I went to sleep, they were saying that Ashkelon prison had been taken over, and this was Jazeera that was saying that. They were saying we're receiving reports. Was that confirmed, Tal? Did you hear anything about that?
Yeah, so other than two, I think it was Palestinian reports that said that. I didn't see Al Jazeera. There was nothing on the Israeli side, but there was some type of, we asked our friends in Ashkelon, and they said that there was some type of commotion, but nothing confirmed.
Okay.
Cool, Tal. Sorry, I cut you off, but what, so you were making a point?
Yeah, it's just that, probably also your insights on this, but, looking at what has happened today, let's just say tomorrow the Israel has taken over all of the kibbutzim and the settlements and the Gaza envelope, And now Israel's faced with, what does it do about the hundreds of civilians and soldiers that are alive that are currently being held in Gaza? The last time we had this situation was with Gilad Shalit, who was alive. He was captured. I forgot, I think 2009 or 2006. I think 2006.
2006, I think, yeah.
And as a result, I think 66 years later, he was released in a prisoner exchange where many Palestinians were released. Some of them with blood on their hands, individuals who had committed attacks against civilians were released. Some of them repeated offenders who continued to do it again and then were killed. And the question is, like, what does Israel do now? Does Israel go into a ground operation in Gaza, and then what? I mean, Israel can't take under its wing 2 million people who have not, they're already separate from Israel for almost 20 years now. You can't take them under your arm and have them as your citizens, or even as your occupied people. Like, it's impossible. It's too many people. And at the same time, if Israel does go in for a ground operation, all those people that are kidnapped will be killed. Hamas will kill all of them, most likely. And so it leaves Israel in a very weird space on what does it do and how does it react. And I don't know how Israel's going to react to this. I mean, the government has shown a complete and utter failure in its abilities to protect its citizens. I personally expect to see the resignation of every single person in the government after this war is over. That includes the Ramatkal, that includes all the heads of the Shin Bet, the Mossad, all the current Israeli government. All of them should resign after this, because they are all responsible for this. But until then, what happens? And I don't know, maybe Justin, if you have some more insight, what you think as from a more of a Palestinian perspective, but this is very different than previous events where we just go into another cycle of violence. There's a change in how Israel might respond that could lead to long-lasting effects.
I mean, if history can tell us the pattern is, is that this is going to, when you ask the two different people, like, why did the Oslo Accords fail? It's so interesting because Israelis will tell you one thing and Palestinians will tell you another one. And I think this is going to be the same situation. Israelis will tell you the Oslo Accords failed because of the wave of suicide attacks that happened and 1,000 Israelis were killed in 2001. Palestinians will say it was because of the settlements. It was because of Ariel Sharon's provocative visit to Al-Aqsa. So now we're in that same situation. Israelis are going to say everything was fine in Gaza, everything was good, and suddenly a barrage of Hamas fighters just rampaged through the streets of southern Israel, killing people, kidnapping, etc., etc. And then Palestinians, they're going to say everything was not fine. We waited, and nothing happened. Side deals with Saudi Arabia, settlers going rampaging, killing people, Al-Aqsa being attacked, etc. So it's because we literally are looking at this. The mindsets are so different, and I think that the only thing that's going to happen is literally, I'm reading the comments from the Palestinian Authority right now, and it's like, take responsibility. Take initiative. What do you guys want to do next? And that's not happening right now. Leaders are not taking the initiative to say, children, we need to move like this. We need leaders to act like parents, not like cheerleaders. Let's see what the public says, and we're going to cheer that. We need leadership that can say, people, we know shit is about to hit the fan. That shit already has hit the fan. This is what we need to do to get out of this. And that's what we lack on both sides.
Yeah, I think also when you're saying about how, this, if you know the situation on the ground, you know that this didn't come out of nowhere, and it truly didn't for a number of reasons. One, we've known that Palestinian militancy has gained a lot of strength in the past few years as being more organized, more well-funded, being more and more capable of actually being a force against the IDF forces. We've seen more attacks against civilians in very popular areas within central Israel as well. And now, just a few months ago, we had the attack on Sinai, where I think 3 soldiers were killed, 2 in a booth. And then for 5 hours, these 2 soldiers were dead in a guard post while this one Egyptian guard was able to just hide there for 5 hours. Nobody knew these soldiers were dead. And then finally, when backup came, They didn't have the Air Force already in the sky. The platoon commander told them to go anyways, and then one of them was killed in the ambush. And this should have been another wake-up call that something is very wrong with the security capabilities of the state of Israel. And for the past year or two, all former heads of the Israeli intelligence community and former politicians have said that we can't keep having this situation with the Palestinians. It's going to get worse. It's going to get really, really bad.
Yeah.
And this is the breaking point. This was the breaking point.
And this is something that I expected. This is something that I knew was eventually going to happen. I don't want to say that I knew it was going to happen, but like as far as that, but I knew something like this, because what's going to happen is these incidents are going to, it's like, you know, when you have a heart condition and you have like a minor heart attack, and if you don't do anything about it, you're going to eventually have a major heart attack. And it's like, we know what the problem is. We're eating too much fatty food, but at the same time, the more this goes, we're going to see more intense attack. We saw 2021 what happened. It went off to the Palestinians in the 48 territories. It went off, you know, through the West Bank, and now we're seeing this level of attack that we've never seen before. And I mean, you know, for God's sake, Palestinians were flying in the air in those gliders. What are they called? Gliders? Parachute gliders?
Paragliders.
So they're getting more sophisticated. And this is only going to increase. So unfortunately, the more and more this goes, it's like that pot of boiling water. It's gonna burst, and it's gonna get more intense. So rather than say who's at fault, rather than say who's to blame, it's like, is bombing Gaza going to be the solution? Is more occupation going to be more siege? Is that going to be the solution? And I'm just telling you guys, it's not working in the past. It's like you're slamming your head against the wall, expecting to go through it, but it's not going to happen.
I think that's there has been the question. I think that Israel has. You know, there's also politicians who talk about the fact that Israel has kind of used Hamas as a way to just, you know, they know that they don't have to deal with Hamas in any serious terms. They allow Hamas to, you know, be problematic every few years, and they beat them down when they need to. But they let them go for too long. They didn't. They decided that we're just gonna lay back and not do anything, and they've let Hamas become a lot more powerful over the years. They've built up their arsenal. They've trained very well. I mean, the fact that they were able to conduct such an operation against a trained, proper military force shows that they've been preparing for this for a long time. And of course, like talking about long term, like what's the next stage? I mean, the only way that the current Israeli leadership can respond in a way that won't essentially get them killed is by responding incredibly harsh, very violently to in Gaza. But also, what does that mean? Just bombing Gaza because that's worked the past 20 times? That also won't be sufficient, even for people who just want to see blood on the Gazans' hands as a retaliation, blood for blood. Because at the end of the day, this isn't going to change anything. I was talking with my fiance earlier about this, how all the soldiers that died in Operation Protective Edge, the entire point of that operation was to destroy this exact capability of Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. It was to stop the capabilities of these individuals from conducting these type of operations in Israel. This is something that has been talked about for a very long time as a fear of the Israeli public of this happening. And those soldiers and all these soldiers in the past died trying to stop that from eventually happening. And the question is, what did these people die for? If this happens, then what are we fighting for? And so that's what I agree in terms of Justin, in terms of the fact that this isn't working. There's explosions in the distance. I might have to run. Just know that. And so something does have to change.
But you also have to ask the question, is that I feel for the last few years, the Israeli government has actually strengthened Hamas. They're allowing them to negotiate with Egypt, to bring in support from Qatar, while at the same time they are weakening the Palestinian Authority. And the Palestinian Authority, love it or leave it, love it or hate it, whatever you want, your opinion. Sometimes I love them, sometimes I hate them. Most of the time I hate them. They are actually doing more to keep the peace. They are actually cracking down. Like if you look at Hamas in the West Bank, Hamas in the West Bank is actually pretty weak. And it's because of the Palestinian Authority. And I think even Shabak and Shin Bet has even acknowledged that the Palestinian Authority has done a pretty good job at controlling these elements. Maybe not so in Jenin, where Jenin is a little bit crazy, wilder, but they are being weakened while at the same time Hamas is being strengthened. So I think you guys as Israelis have to say, you guys have given them kind of the leash, sort of an extra long leash, by allowing them to have good ties with Egypt and more things, money coming in from Egypt and support from Qatar. And I think this is a policy.
Guys, Biden has arrived. Let's see.
I hope he knows how to speak.
And the
He
terrorists
doesn't.
everywhere. The United States stands on a
I'm putting it back a moment.
Today, the people of Israel are under attack, orchestrated by a terrorist organization, Hamas. In this moment of tragedy, I want to say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves. You know, the world's seen appalling images. Thousands of rockets in the space of hours raining down on Israeli cities. I got up this morning, started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians in the street, in their homes. Innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas. Just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar. It's unconscionable. You know, when I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, I told him the United States stands with the people of Israel in the face of these terrorist assaults. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people, full stop. There's never justification for terrorist attacks. And my administration's support for Israel's security is rock solid and unwavering. Let me say this as clearly as I can. This is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. The world is watching. I've also been in contact with the King of Jordan, spoken with members of Congress, directed my national security team to engage with their Israeli counterparts, military to military, intelligence to intelligence, diplomat to diplomat, to make sure Israel has what it needs. I've also directed my team to remain in constant contact with leaders throughout the region, including Egypt, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Oman, the UAE, as well as our European partners and the Palestinian Authority. It's also a terrible tragedy on a human level. It's hurting innocent people. Seeing the lives that have been broken by this, the families torn apart, it's heartbreaking. And Jill and I are praying for those families who've been impacted by this violence. We grieve with those who've lost their loved ones, lost a piece of their soul. We have hope for swift recovery for many who have been wounded. We're going to remain in close touch with Prime Minister. I personally am going to remain in close contact with Prime Minister Netanyahu as this situation continues to develop. And let there be no mistake, the United States stands with the state of Israel, just as we have from the moment the United States became the first nation to recognize Israel 11 minutes after its founding 75 years ago. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, was there an intelligence failure in the lead up to this attack? Mr. President, can you tell us what Phoebe asked you specifically for support?
So interesting. They make a few different referrals here. One is, it looks like, to the agreement that was going on between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That, like, when Biden was saying to not take advantage of this for, like, he was kind of alluding to other reasonings. It was a pretty, I don't know, it didn't interesting. It was a very normal response by an American president. What do you think, Justin? It didn't sound specifically different.
You know, there was nothing different. It's what I kind of expected, that, you know, the whole we stand with Israel, Israel's the victim, Israel. Okay, I get it. But at the same time, it's like the United States has to also say, has to take a sort of a position that, you know, what we need to do to stop this. I mean, it's, you know, this sort of just blank policy saying, you know, that this is the situation, this is, we condemn. Yeah, we do condemn it. We condemn the life of the loss of life for innocent. We condemn that people are being held hostage, you know, but again, this is not taking out of, it's not coming out of thin air. We have to address the other issues that are going on here. I don't know. I just feel like this is what the United States always does, and it's just the same, you know, stuff that's been said over and over again.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm losing steam. I barely slept last night. I'm gonna nap. Do you guys want to stay on, or should we wrap
Just
it?
I can just a few minutes just update
Yeah,
about a
just
few
a
things.
few.
By the way,
Good.
Okay, we'll
this
we'll,
is
we'll we'll
from
give some final thoughts. Sure.
Sure.
just quickly. This is from Palestinian sources, so I don't know how accurate it is yet. I have to wait for Israeli sources.
Mhm.
But supposedly that there's Palestinian militants in the industrial zone in Ashkelon. So that's from a few minutes ago. So
Still, wow.
so I don't know if it's again it's from a specific type of site that they're sometimes truthful but sometimes not. So just take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
You know, from a strategical point, I don't understand like any army that would do like that's why I tell you the silliness of these type of attacks. Like, were they just made just for the sake of attacking? Like, say for example, they were doing it from a strategical point. Like how do you expect to keep like when you're invading or attacking a country and you're maybe I don't know maybe you're trying to like get more land or doing whatever you are doing? Wouldn't you focus on having a continuing supplying, supporting those soldiers and fighting? But it's like just drop them in there and let them fight until they run out of fuel and they run out of bullets and stuff, and then I mean that's what I'm just saying. It just doesn't make no sense to me, this whole thing. So it's like, no, let's just kill some people and see where this goes. Very short-sighted, very short-sighted.
Yeah. So there's other reports that can go on. I'm on Twitter. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I can give them updates from sources that I have. Just Tal Hagen, the exact thing. But just as a final thing, reach out to your friends and family, whether they're in Israel or in Gaza, and make sure that they're safe. Make sure that they're in safe areas as much as possible. Don't be careful with the reports that you see.
Yeah.
Try to confirm them from multiple sites. For example, my personal thing is I have certain sites that I trust more or less. But for example, if I see things that are very negative for Israel being posted on Palestinian sites, I'm a little bit more hesitant until I see them on Israeli sites, and vice versa. If they're very negative for Israel, if they're posted on the other side. So try to be wary about what you see. Try not to post photos of dead people, whether Palestinians or Israelis, just in case the families don't have to see their faces before the proper authorities come and tell them that they've been killed or murdered. And just stay safe, and we'll do another update when we can about what's been going on.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank-
Al. Stay safe. Adar, thanks.
Yeah, thank you both so much. We will do another live stream tomorrow, Israel Palestine time, tonight U.S. time, and we'll do live streams every day until things de-escalate, or at least a few times a week, just to give as much honest reporting as possible. We remain dedicated to providing information in as fair, balanced as way as possible, and providing an analysis that encompasses the narratives of both sides and provides some hope for reconciliation in the future, as hard as that may be to see right now. We remain dedicated to a peaceful resolution. So thank you all, wherever you're tuning in from, sending love, and we will see you in a few hours.
Awesome.